In the world of boxing, very few names carry the same level of power, wealth, and controversy as Floyd "Money" Mayweather. To the casual fan, he is simply the man who retired undefeated at 50-0, flashing diamond-encrusted watches, stepping into private jets like taxis, and holding stacks of $100 bills as if they were mere playthings. But behind this glittering surface lies a mystery. How did a boy born into a broken family, surrounded by drugs, crime, and violence, transform himself into one of the most feared, skilled, and richest athletes in the history of sports? What makes Mayweather such a polarizing figure who is loved by millions yet hated by just as many? And why, despite all the hate, has he always been the man everyone tunes in to watch, no matter the price? This isn't just a story of an undefeated fighter. It's the explosive journey of survival, genius, and calculated madness. Mayweather is more than just a boxer. He's a brand, a business empire, and a walking headline. His life is filled with contradictions. He is both the villain and the hero, the underdog who became a king, and the king who still fights for validation. His path to glory was not smooth. It was built on family betrayals, painful sacrifices, grueling discipline, and an obsession with being untouchable. For some, he represents arrogance and greed. For others, he embodies the true definition of hard work, resilience, and perfection. The mystery of Floyd Mayweather lies in the fact that no matter how much you think you know about him, there's always another shocking layer waiting to be revealed. His controversies with law, his turbulent relationships, his obsession with money, his jaw-dropping purchases, and his strategic brilliance both inside and outside of the ring, each piece paints a portrait of a man who rewrote the definition of greatness on his own terms. He is not just the story of a boxer. He is the story of an empire, of a man who beat the system, of someone who turned himself into the richest and most talked about fighter in the world. This biography will unravel everything. His childhood filled with pain and hunger, his ruthless rise in the boxing world, the psychological warfare he mastered to destroy opponents before throwing a punch, the secrets behind his perfect defense, the billion-dollar fights, and even the dark controversies he can never escape. This is not just a timeline of achievements. This is a deep dive into the mind and legacy of the man who calls himself TBE, the best ever. Floyd Mayweather's story begins not in the bright lights of Las Vegas, but in the shadows of a troubled Detroit neighborhood, where the young boy who would later be known as Money had nothing but a dream, fists of fury, and the hunger to be remembered forever. From that point forward, every chapter in his life only gets more shocking, more dramatic, and more unbelievable.
Floyd Joy Mayweather Jr. was born on February 24, 1977 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, into a family where boxing wasn't just a sport, it was a way of life. His father, Floyd Mayweather Sr., was a professional boxer best known for fighting the great Sugar Ray Leonard, while his uncles, Roger Mayweather and Jeff Mayweather, were also accomplished fighters. From the moment Floyd could walk, gloves were already part of his world. But while the outside world saw him as destined for greatness, his early years were marked by pain, poverty, and struggles that could have broken anyone else. Growing up, Floyd lived in a tough neighborhood where violence and crime were everyday realities. Money was always scarce, and the family often struggled to put food on the table. He recalls sleeping in a small, overcrowded apartment where his mother, who battled with addiction issues, tried to raise him in an environment that was anything but stable. Floyd has openly admitted that sometimes there was no electricity or running water in the house, forcing him to survive with very little. These experiences, though heartbreaking, planted the seed of determination inside him, the refusal to ever go hungry or powerless again. But the most complicated figure in his young life was his father. Floyd Sr. wasn't just his first trainer. He was also a man torn between fatherhood and his own troubles. Their relationship was volatile, filled with both love and conflict. The most haunting memory came when Floyd Jr. was a small boy. He watched his father get shot in the leg during a confrontation while his mother held him in her arms. That moment of trauma left a permanent mark on him, showing him the brutal side of life at a very young age. Despite his father's flaws, Floyd Sr. pushed him relentlessly in the gym, molding him into a fighter who could survive anything. Even as a child, he showed signs of brilliance in boxing. He would shadow box for hours, practicing movements he saw his father and uncles perform, and soon began dominating local amateur fights. His natural speed, sharp reflexes, and unshakable confidence made him stand out. By the time he was a teenager, he was already a rising star in the amateur circuit, and his family realized he was destined for something bigger. However, his path wasn't smooth. The lack of stability at home often left him emotionally scarred, and the absence of his father at critical moments made him feel abandoned. But rather than break him, those struggles turned into fuel for his ambition. To cope with pain, Floyd created a mindset that would later define his entire career. He would never allow himself to be vulnerable again. He built walls of discipline, confidence, and obsession with perfection. For him, boxing became more than just a sport. It was his escape, his salvation, and his ticket out of poverty. Every punch he threw wasn't just practice. It was a declaration that he would not be trapped in the cycle of poverty, addiction, and violence that surrounded him. The young boy from Grand Rapids wasn't just fighting opponents in the ring, he was fighting life itself. And by channeling his early struggles into relentless drive, Floyd Mayweather Jr. began crafting the identity of the champion the world would one day call money.
The Mayweather family is no ordinary boxing family. It is a dynasty, a bloodline soaked in sweat, sacrifice, and survival inside the squared circle. To understand Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s greatness, one must first look at the foundation laid by his father and uncles. Floyd Mayweather Sr., a former welterweight contender, was not just a fighter, but a defensive mastermind. Best known for his crafty shoulder roll technique, a defensive system that would later become Floyd Jr.'s trademark. His father once fought the legendary Sugar Ray Leonard, and though he lost, the toughness and slickness he showed in the ring proved that boxing ran naturally in his veins. However, Mayweather Sr.'s career was plagued by injuries, including a devastating gunshot wound to the leg that limited his potential. Despite this, he passed down his knowledge, grit, and defensive brilliance to his son, shaping him into a cerebral, untouchable boxer. But the story doesn't stop with the father. Floyd Jr.'s uncles, Roger Mayweather and Jeff Mayweather, also carried the torch of boxing. Roger, nicknamed the Black Mamba, was a two-weight world champion who faced some of the best fighters of the 1980s and early 1990s, including Julio Cesar Chavez. Known for his sharp jab and ferocious right hand, Roger was both feared and respected. He would eventually become Floyd Jr.'s head trainer, guiding him through most of his professional career, sharpening his natural instincts, and teaching him how to break down opponents with precision rather than reckless aggression. Jeff Mayweather, though less famous, was also a professional boxer and later became a respected trainer. Each of these men contributed a piece of their boxing DNA to Floyd Jr., making him not just a fighter, but the ultimate product of generations of warriors. Yet, the Mayweather legacy wasn't built on glory alone. It was also scarred by pain, poverty, and personal demons. The family had its share of conflicts, especially between Floyd Sr. and Roger, who often clashed over who was the better trainer and who should guide Floyd Jr. These battles created a stormy atmosphere around young Floyd, who had to grow up in the middle of not just physical fights, but also bitter family feuds. But instead of breaking him, this tension molded him. He learned how to survive in chaos, how to absorb pain and turn it into fuel. When people call Floyd Mayweather the best ever, they forget that he is not just an individual success story, he is the product of a fighting bloodline, the continuation of a family that lived and bled for the sport. This legacy became Floyd Jr.'s secret weapon. Unlike most boxers who enter the ring as outsiders trying to learn the craft, Floyd was practically born into it. Boxing wasn't his career, it was his inheritance. Every defensive move, every counterpunch, every psychological tactic he used in the ring was rooted in the lessons passed down by his father and uncles. This bloodline of boxing gave him not only the physical skills, but also the mental toughness to dominate the sport. The Mayweathers weren't just a family, they were a dynasty, and Floyd Jr. was destined to be its crown jewel.
Before he became Money Mayweather, feared inside the professional ring and adored or hated outside of it, Floyd Mayweather Jr. was a young fighter carving his path through the unforgiving world of amateur boxing. This stage of his life was the foundation of his precision, his defensive genius, and his relentless hunger to prove himself. He wasn't born into wealth or privilege, but into a family where boxing was oxygen, and every punch thrown in the gym was one more step away from poverty. From the very beginning, Floyd had a vision. He wanted to be great, not just good, and that attitude was on full display as he tore through the amateur ranks. Floyd started fighting in amateur competitions as a teenager, but what set him apart wasn't just his natural reflexes or quickness. It was his obsessive dedication to perfecting every move. By the age of 16, he already had a reputation as a boxer who could make opponents miss without breaking a sweat. He often trained so intensely that coaches had to pull him back, afraid he would push himself to exhaustion. Floyd's early amateur fights highlighted a style that would later define his career: slick head movement, laser-sharp counters, and an almost supernatural ability to read his opponents. It was here that the world first witnessed glimpses of the defense that would one day be called the Mayweather style. In the amateur ring, Mayweather wasn't just winning, he was dominating. His amateur record of 84 wins with only 6 losses stands as proof of his consistency and control. He became a national standout, winning the National Golden Gloves Championships 3 times in 1993, 1994, and 1996. These victories weren't just trophies, they were statements. Every time Floyd had his hand raised, it wasn't just another win, it was another reminder that he was destined for greatness. His performances drew attention because he made good fighters look ordinary. Coaches, fans, and even rivals knew they were watching something rare. One of the most defining moments in his amateur career came during the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, where Floyd represented the United States. By then, he was already carrying the nickname Pretty Boy because of his uncanny ability to fight without taking visible damage. At the Olympics, Floyd showcased brilliance, advancing through tough opponents with skill and swagger. But then came the infamous semifinal bout against Serafim Todorov, a fight that still sparks controversy to this day. Mayweather seemed to dominate, landing clean shots and controlling the pace, yet the judges awarded a win to Todorov in a decision widely considered one of the most corrupt in amateur boxing history. Floyd walked away with a bronze medal, but to many, he had been robbed of gold. That moment became a turning point. Instead of breaking him, the unfair decision ignited a fire inside Floyd. He vowed never again to let judges decide his fate, never again to allow corruption or politics to overshadow his talent. This Olympic robbery became the fuel that powered his transformation into one of the most precise, calculated, and untouchable fighters the sport has ever seen. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about domination, about leaving no doubt. The amateur chapter of Floyd's story is often overshadowed by his glittering professional career, but it is in these years that the mold of Money Mayweather was cast. Every struggle, every victory, and even the controversial loss at the Olympics built the mentality of a man who would later retire 50-0, undefeated, untouchable, and unmatched. Floyd's amateur journey was not just the rise of a fighter, it was the rise of a warrior determined to rewrite boxing history.
When Floyd Mayweather Jr. stepped into the boxing world as a young professional, the sport instantly noticed something different about him. He wasn't just another fighter hungry for fame. He carried an aura of speed, precision, and flair that was unmatched. His nickname Pretty Boy wasn't self-proclaimed at first. It was given to him by gym mates and trainers who noticed that despite the brutal sparring sessions and countless fights, his face remained remarkably unmarked. Unlike most young fighters who carried black eyes, bruises, and scars as badges of honor, Mayweather's defensive wizardry left him almost untouched. His immaculate skin became a symbol of his unhittable style, and soon the world knew him as Pretty Boy Mayweather. But this nickname was more than vanity. It reflected his style inside the ring. Mayweather's boxing was clean, sharp, and technical. He wasn't a brawler who sought out bloody wars. He was a master tactician, studying opponents with cold precision, dissecting them round by round. This was the beginning of his signature style, the now legendary Philly shell defense. With his lead shoulder rolled, his chin tucked, and his lightning reflexes, he became nearly impossible to hit flush. To many, it looked flashy, even cocky, but in reality, it was a sign of his boxing genius, honed through thousands of hours in the gym. Mayweather's early professional career was marked by stunning victories. He debuted in 1996, right after his Olympic bronze medal, and quickly began racking up wins against fighters who underestimated his youth and size. By his 10th fight, whispers spread in the boxing world that this kid wasn't ordinary, he was destined for greatness. Trainers, commentators, and even rivals admitted that his talent was rare, almost alien-like. His speed wasn't just fast, it was surgical, allowing him to throw punches opponents never saw coming while dodging counters with a smirk on his face. Behind the nickname Pretty Boy was also a mindset of untouchability. Mayweather cultivated an image of someone who not only avoided punches, but avoided defeat itself. Every fight was a chess match, and he was always 3 moves ahead. To young boxers watching him, he became the blueprint for technical excellence, proof that brains could defeat brute strength. However, what made this period so fascinating wasn't just his talent, it was his hunger.
Mayweather wasn't rich yet, wasn't the flashy Money Mayweather the world would later know. He was a fighter with nothing but his skill, ambition, and burning desire to rise above the shadows of his family's boxing name. The birth of Pretty Boy was the foundation of an empire, a persona that showed the world that Mayweather wasn't just another fighter. He was a phenomenon in the making.
The turning point in Floyd Mayweather's career, the moment that catapulted him from being just another undefeated champion into a global superstar, came on May 5, 2007, when he stepped into the ring with the Golden Boy himself, Oscar De La Hoya. At the time, De La Hoya wasn't just a boxer, he was a crossover icon. He was Hollywood's favorite fighter, adored by mainstream audiences, with endorsement deals, red carpet appearances, and a fan base that extended far beyond boxing. For Mayweather, who had dominated the sport technically but hadn't broken into the mainstream consciousness, this was his golden ticket. He knew that beating Oscar meant more than just another victory. It meant stepping into the global spotlight and redefining his image forever. The fight had everything: drama, politics, and money. In fact, it became the highest-grossing pay-per-view in boxing history at the time, generating over $136 million, shattering records that many thought would stand for decades. But the road to this fight wasn't just about numbers, it was about two personalities colliding. Oscar was marketed as the golden, glamorous face of boxing, while Mayweather was painted as the arrogant, brash, and cocky challenger who dared to call himself the best. This narrative made the bout one of the most anticipated clashes of the 21st century. Inside the ring, Mayweather delivered a masterclass. Although many predicted that Oscar's size and star power would overwhelm him, Floyd's defensive brilliance, counterpunching accuracy, and mental composure stole the show. He fought smart, using his shoulder roll to deflect Oscar's power shots while picking him apart with sharp counters. The fight was close on the scorecards, a split decision victory for Mayweather, but the performance confirmed what boxing purists had always known. Floyd wasn't just skilled, he was untouchable. Beyond the ring, this fight transformed Mayweather's persona. It was here that Money Mayweather truly took shape. He didn't just win the fight, he won the business. He left top-ranked promotions who had been limiting his earnings and launched Mayweather Promotions, effectively seizing control of his career. No longer was he dependent on promoters to dictate his worth. Now he became his own boss, negotiating his own paydays and turning boxing into a billion-dollar enterprise under his brand. Perhaps the most shocking fact is how Floyd deliberately played the villain role to perfection. While De La Hoya was the people's hero, Mayweather embraced the hate, understanding that controversy sells. He leaned into the boos, flaunted his wealth, and built his brand around the idea that people would pay just as much to see him lose as they would to see him win. This psychological shift in marketing the sport completely changed boxing's business model, paving the way for fighters to become their own promoters. The clash with De La Hoya wasn't just a fight, it was a cultural moment. It turned Mayweather into the highest-paid athlete in the world, gave him financial and creative independence, and solidified his place as the face of modern boxing. From that night forward, Floyd wasn't just a fighter, he was a global brand, a businessman, and the definition of boxing superstardom. The transformation of Floyd Mayweather from Pretty Boy to Money Mayweather wasn't just a nickname change, it was a complete reinvention of his identity, his brand, and his legacy. After establishing himself as one of the most technically flawless boxers in the world, Mayweather realized that being great inside the ring wasn't enough. To stand out, to secure generational wealth, and to dominate headlines, he needed to become a larger-than-life figure. This evolution began in the mid-2000s, when he consciously embraced the role of the villain, the showman, and the businessman. He adopted the name Money Mayweather, flaunting $100 bills, luxury cars, and diamond-encrusted watches. He would walk into casinos and bet millions on a single game, then post the receipts to prove it. This wasn't arrogance for the sake of arrogance. It was a calculated move to sell fights, attract media attention, and keep fans and haters alike talking about him non-stop. The key turning point in this transformation came with his breakaway from top-ranked promotions. Mayweather saw that promoters were taking a massive share of fighters' earnings, while boxers risked their health in the ring. He made the bold decision to buy out his contract for $750,000, one of the most strategic moves in sports history. By doing so, he gained complete control over his career, choosing his opponents, negotiating his purses, and keeping the lion's share of the profits. This independence birthed Mayweather Promotions, a brand that symbolized power, freedom, and financial control. From that moment, every fight became not just a sporting event, but a global spectacle, where Mayweather was both the athlete and the boss.
But the creation of Money Mayweather wasn't only about business, it was psychological warfare. Floyd understood the fight game on every level. By flashing his wealth, mocking opponents, and belittling their earnings compared to his, he got into their heads before the first punch was thrown. Fans paid to see him lose, but whether they loved him or hated him, they couldn't resist watching him. His fights broke pay-per-view records, with millions tuning in to witness either his downfall or his brilliance. The irony? The more people wanted to see him defeated, the richer he became. Money Mayweather became a symbol of excess and perfection. Private jets, Bugattis, Rolls-Royces, 24-hour shopping sprees, and an entourage that moved like royalty. Critics called him egotistical, but to Floyd, this was proof that a kid who once lived with nothing now lived like a king. He carefully curated this image to contrast with his perfection in the ring: untouchable defense, razor-sharp counters, and a record that stayed spotless. The Money Mayweather persona was not only marketing genius, it was the reason Floyd went from being a great boxer to a global icon who transcended the sport. He wasn't just fighting for belts anymore, he was fighting for legacy, wealth, and immortality.
Floyd Mayweather's undefeated record of 50 wins and 0 losses is not just a number. It is a monument in the history of boxing, a legacy that cements his name as one of the greatest defensive masterminds ever to step into the ring. To go unbeaten in a sport as brutal and unpredictable as boxing is an accomplishment so rare that it almost defies logic. His journey toward the 50-0 legacy was a mixture of brilliance, strategy, controversy, and undeniable skill. Every fight became a test of not only his boxing ability, but also his mental sharpness, discipline, and ability to control narratives inside and outside the ring. Mayweather began building this streak during his early professional career in the late 1990s, immediately proving himself as a fighter who was nearly impossible to hit cleanly. His nickname, Pretty Boy, earned from his amateur days because he rarely took damage, continued to reflect his unique style. He emerged from fights without the scars most boxers wear like badges of war. But as the wins stacked up, Mayweather's undefeated streak became both a badge of honor and a target. Every opponent wanted to be the one to break it, and each bout carried immense pressure, not just to win, but to maintain perfection. One of the pivotal fights that solidified his rise was against Diego Corrales in 2001, where Mayweather delivered a boxing masterclass, knocking Corrales down 5 times before the fight was stopped. This performance showed the world that Mayweather wasn't just a defensive fighter, he could dominate and dismantle dangerous opponents. From there, he continued to build his undefeated streak with victories over elite names such as Jose Luis Castillo, Arturo Gatti, Zab Judah, and Oscar De La Hoya. Each of these fights brought challenges and, at times, controversy. For instance, many argued Castillo had beaten Mayweather in their first fight in 2002, but Floyd adjusted in the rematch, proving his ability to adapt and outthink rivals. As his career progressed, his fights grew larger in scale, becoming not just sporting events, but global spectacles. His 2007 showdown with Oscar De La Hoya was one of the most watched boxing matches in history, cementing Mayweather as a pay-per-view megastar. By defeating De La Hoya, he captured the WBC light middleweight title and further fueled his money persona. His perfection inside the ring was now directly tied to his fortune outside it. The 2015 fight of the century against Manny Pacquiao was perhaps the most anticipated fight of the modern era. Years of build-up, controversies, and fan debates finally culminated in a clash where Mayweather showcased his defensive genius, nullifying Pacquiao's speed and aggression. Though critics labeled the fight boring, Mayweather's mastery in a controlling distance and pace highlighted why nobody could crack his code. That victory extended his record to 48-0 and shut down the biggest threat to his streak. Then came the fight that pushed him to the historic 50-0 milestone, his 2017 crossover spectacle against UFC star Conor McGregor. While many dismissed McGregor as a serious challenger, the event broke pay-per-view records, and Mayweather's calculated approach ensured he dictated the outcome. He allowed McGregor to expend energy early before closing in for a 10th-round TKO, officially sealing his legacy with a flawless record of 50 victories and 0 defeats. What makes Mayweather's 50-0 so special is not just the number, it's the context. Unlike other fighters who chase perfection, Mayweather fought across 5 different weight divisions, often against champions and future Hall of Famers. His defensive brilliance made him nearly untouchable, while his ring IQ allowed him to exploit every opponent's weakness. To retire undefeated while facing such consistent top-level competition is something boxing may never see again. Critics argue that some of his opponents were past their prime, or that his cautious style robbed fans of the blood and guts wars they craved, but the truth is undeniable.
In a sport where even the greatest legends, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Mike Tyson, Manny Pacquiao, suffered losses, Floyd Mayweather managed to escape without ever tasting defeat. His 50-0 legacy stands as a symbol of absolute dominance, discipline, and control, making him not only one of boxing's most controversial figures, but also one of its most untouchable icons.
Floyd Mayweather was never just a boxer. He was a defensive scientist who redefined the meaning of mastery inside the ring. While most fighters rely on offense, Floyd made defense his weapon, and he executed it with a precision so rare that it looked almost supernatural. His signature Philly shell stance, shoulder rolled up, chin tucked, one arm shielding the body and the other ready to counter, was a system of perfect balance between protection and opportunity. Opponents swung with all their might, but time and again their punches hit nothing but air or the hard surface of his shoulder, while Floyd's razor-sharp counters punished every mistake. What made him extraordinary wasn't just avoiding punches, it was his ability to see punches before they came. His anticipation, reflexes, and fight IQ allowed him to neutralize the hardest hitters in boxing history, fighters like Canelo Alvarez, Shane Mosley, and Manny Pacquiao, without suffering serious damage. Across 50 professional fights, Floyd absorbed fewer clean punches than any elite boxer of his generation, proving that his style wasn't just flashy but effective. Critics often claimed his fights were boring, but in truth he was putting on a technical masterclass that only true purists could fully appreciate. His defensive genius extended his career, preserved his health, and cemented him as one of the hardest boxers to beat in history. Floyd didn't just win fights, he dismantled opponents' confidence by making them miss over and over again, showing the world that in the brutal sport of boxing, intelligence and patience could outshine brute strength.
For all his greatness in the ring, Floyd Mayweather's career was never free of shadows. In fact, his life outside boxing was often as dramatic as his victories inside it, and controversy seemed to follow him everywhere he went. One of the most significant stains on his legacy came from his domestic violence cases. Floyd was accused multiple times of physically assaulting women, including the highly publicized case involving Josie Harris, the mother of 3 of his children. He even served jail time in 2012 for domestic battery, a moment that sparked outrage worldwide, with critics questioning how one of the sport's biggest stars could still remain so celebrated despite repeated abuse allegations. Alongside these personal scandals, Floyd was also linked to performance-enhancing drug controversies. Before his mega fight with Manny Pacquiao in 2015, reports emerged that Mayweather had received an IV infusion at his home, something normally banned under anti-doping rules. Although the United States Anti-Doping Agency, USADA, granted him a retroactive exemption, many critics accused him of having special protection and labeled it a cover-up, further fueling debates about whether Floyd's career was fully clean. Beyond legal and doping controversies, Floyd also carried a reputation for being arrogant, flashy, and disrespectful, with his alter ego, Money Mayweather, designed to provoke as much as entertain. He flaunted cash, insulted opponents with trash talk, and often boasted about his wealth in ways that drew both admiration and disgust. His relationships with promoters and fighters were equally controversial. He clashed bitterly with Bob Arum before leaving Top Rank, engaged in heated feuds with Oscar De La Hoya, and frequently mocked rivals both before and after fights, often blurring the line between hype and humiliation. He was also accused of ducking dangerous opponents during their prime, particularly Manny Pacquiao in the late 1900s, and fighters like Antonio Margarito or Paul Williams, choosing instead to fight them later when circumstances favored him. While Mayweather and his fans defended these decisions as smart business, critics painted him as a cherry picker who protected his record. Even his exhibitions after retirement brought fresh controversy. His fights against YouTubers like Logan Paul and kickboxers like Tenshin Natsukawa were seen as pure cash grabs, damaging the purity of boxing while padding his already massive fortune. Yet despite all the scandals, legal battles, and criticisms, Floyd always walked away untouchable in one sense. His brand only grew bigger. His controversies didn't destroy him. Instead, they became part of the spectacle that made him one of the most polarizing, yet talked about athletes in the world. Floyd Mayweather's story is not just about an undefeated boxer. It is also about a man who lived under constant fire, whose flaws were as public as his triumphs, and whose controversies will forever remain inseparable from his legendary career.
Floyd Mayweather didn't just want to be a great fighter, he wanted to be the boss. In 2006, when he left his longtime promoter Bob Arum and Top Rank, many thought it was career suicide. Fighters usually relied on powerful promoters to control negotiations, TV deals, and fight matchmaking. But Mayweather saw something others didn't. Why
Why let others take a massive cut from the billions his fists could generate? With one bold move, he paid $750,000 to buy himself out of his top-ranked contract, a decision that looked risky at the time, but turned into the single smartest financial gamble in boxing history. That's when Mayweather Promotions was born, an empire that would forever change how athletes viewed their financial worth. From that point forward, Floyd wasn't just a fighter, he was the CEO of his own brand. He negotiated directly with networks, formed alliances with Al Heyman, his business advisor and one of the most powerful men in boxing, and took full control of every aspect of his career. With his promotional company, he ensured he wasn't just getting a fight purse, he was getting revenue from ticket sales, merchandise, pay-per-view buys, international broadcasting, and sponsorship deals. The key was ownership, and Floyd mastered it better than anyone before him. Unlike most boxers who walked away with scraps after promoters and managers took their slice, Mayweather was taking the lion's share. The results were staggering. When Floyd fought Oscar De La Hoya in 2007, it became the highest-grossing boxing match at that time, generating over $130 million. But Floyd didn't stop there. He turned pay-per-view into his personal ATM. His fights with Miguel Cotto, Canelo Alvarez, and especially Manny Pacquiao shattered records. The Pacquiao fight in 2015, dubbed the Fight of the Century, earned an insane $600 million, with Mayweather personally walking away with over $250 million for one night of work. That fight proved his formula worked. Floyd didn't need promoters, promoters needed him. What made him different was his business brain. He studied every deal, obsessed over revenue splits, and marketed himself like a Hollywood star. He turned being hated into profit. People paid to see him lose, and when he never did, they kept paying again and again. He knew controversy sells, so he flaunted his wealth, showing off stacks of cash, exotic cars, and diamond-encrusted watches. The world mocked him, envied him, criticized him, but most importantly, paid him. Every Money Mayweather headline wasn't just an ego boost, it was marketing genius. Mayweather Promotions didn't just serve him, it became a platform for other fighters too. Stars like Gervonta Davis were brought under his wing, giving Floyd another stream of income while solidifying his legacy as a boxing businessman. With his company, he guaranteed he would never be financially dependent on anyone again. This self-sufficiency allowed him to walk away from boxing undefeated, with over $1.1 billion earned in career revenue, making him the richest boxer of all time and one of the richest athletes in history. Floyd Mayweather's brilliance wasn't just inside the ring, it was in realizing that boxing isn't just a sport, it's a business, and he mastered both. While others became legends, Floyd became a legend and a billionaire, rewriting the blueprint for what athletes could achieve when they owned their name, their brand, and their destiny.
When you think of Floyd Money Mayweather, you don't just think of a boxer, you think of a living, breathing symbol of wealth and luxury. Mayweather's billionaire lifestyle is as much a part of his legacy as his undefeated boxing record. Known for his jaw-dropping spending habits, Floyd treats money as if it were limitless. His garage, for example, is a shrine to automotive excess, filled with fleets of luxury cars like Bugattis, Rolls-Royces, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis, many of which he admits he has never even driven. In fact, Floyd once revealed he keeps separate fleets in different cities, so wherever he goes, he has a lineup of million-dollar rides waiting for him. But it doesn't stop there. Mayweather owns multiple mansions that look like palaces, from his $25 million Beverly Hills estate, complete with a candy shop, wine cellar, and private movie theater, to his Las Vegas mansion that feels more like a luxury resort. Floyd makes sure his living spaces reflect his status. One of his most ridiculous flexes? Spending $18 million on a single diamond watch known as the Billionaire Watch, encrusted with 260 carats of emerald-cut diamonds. For him, it's not just a timepiece, it's a statement to the world that no one can outshine Money Mayweather. His purchases often blur the line between genius and absurdity. He's been known to carry duffel bags stuffed with millions in cash, buy private jets on a whim, and gamble millions in a single night. Then there are the insane flexes, like traveling with an entourage whose sole job is to carry his cash or dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars on shopping sprees for clothes he might never wear. To many, these purchases seem dumb, but for Floyd, they're part of the larger-than-life character he built. His spending is entertainment, branding, and dominance all rolled into one. In the end, Floyd's insane lifestyle is not just about enjoying wealth. It's about showing the world that he conquered boxing and turned it into a pathway to billionaire status. His cars, mansions, jewelry, and over-the-top flexes are reminders that he isn't just the best boxer of his generation, he's the ultimate symbol of boxing's money era.
Behind the glamour of Floyd Mayweather's billion-dollar empire lies a story soaked in family drama, rivalries, and bitter conflicts. The Mayweather family name itself is legendary in boxing, but it has also been torn apart by personal grudges and power struggles. The most infamous feud was between Floyd Mayweather Jr., his father Floyd Mayweather Sr., and his uncle Roger Mayweather. Floyd Sr. was once his son's trainer, but their relationship was anything but smooth. He spent years in prison during Floyd's childhood for drug-related charges, leaving Floyd Jr. to be raised mostly by his mother and later trained by his uncle Roger. When Floyd Sr. returned, he wanted to take back control as Floyd Jr.'s head trainer, but tensions erupted, especially when Floyd chose Roger over his father. This decision fueled years of verbal attacks, with Floyd Sr. calling his son ungrateful and Floyd Jr. often dismissing his father's role in his success. At one point, Floyd Sr. even threatened to train Oscar De La Hoya against his own son, a move that nearly destroyed their relationship forever. The feud between Floyd Sr. and Roger was just as explosive. Both men were fiercely protective of their place in Floyd Jr.'s corner, and their rivalry often turned into screaming matches in the gym, sometimes escalating to near physical fights. Despite all the chaos, there was a twisted sense of loyalty within the Mayweather bloodline. Roger, known as the Black Mamba, was the one who sharpened Floyd's defensive brilliance, while Floyd Sr. laid the foundation of his technical skills. Yet their egos often overshadowed their shared mission of guiding Floyd Jr. to greatness. Over the years, these family battles spilled into the media, painting the Mayweathers as a dysfunctional dynasty torn apart by pride, money, and control. Still, the drama only added to the myth of Money Mayweather, proving that his toughest fights weren't always in the ring. They were often inside his own family.
When it comes to boxing greatness, few resumes shine brighter than Floyd Mayweather's. His career is a monument of perfection, dominance, and unmatched longevity. The most defining achievement is his undefeated record of 50-0, a milestone that broke the legendary Rocky Marciano's 49-0 record and set a new standard in the sport. Across 5 different weight divisions, super featherweight, lightweight, light welterweight, and light middleweight, Mayweather captured 15 world championships, proving that his skills translated no matter the opponent or size. He is one of the rare fighters in history to be universally recognized as the pound-for-pound king for more than a decade, showcasing his ability to consistently outclass elite competition. His achievements weren't just about titles, but also the manner in which he won them. Floyd held the WBC title in 4 different weight classes, the WBA and WBO welterweight titles, and the IBF junior lightweight title. He became the lineal champion in 4 separate weight divisions, a feat achieved by only a handful of boxers in history. His adaptability allowed him to defeat aggressive punchers like Diego Corrales, technical masters like Juan Manuel Marquez, defensive specialists like Zab Judah, and even bigger, stronger opponents like Canelo Alvarez. His fight against Canelo is especially notable because Mayweather was 36 years old while Canelo was an undefeated rising star in his prime. Yet Mayweather schooled him so thoroughly it remains one of the most one-sided lessons in boxing history. Beyond championships, Floyd also dominated with record-breaking pay-per-view sales, earning the title of the sport's biggest box office draw. His fight with Manny Pacquiao in 2015 shattered PPV records, with over 4.6 million buys, and generated more than $600 million in revenue. The money fight against Conor McGregor in 2017 only added to his legacy, pushing him past the billion-dollar career earnings mark, something no other boxer has done. On the awards side, Mayweather was named Fighter of the Decade 2010s by the Boxing Writers Association of America, the BWAA, won BWAA Fighter of the Year twice, 2007-2013, and was named ESP Best Fighter Award 6 times, a record that further cements his dominance. What makes his achievements even more astonishing is the way he blended skill with business. Mayweather was not just a champion in the ring, but also outside it, becoming the highest-paid athlete in the world multiple times according to Forbes. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2021, solidifying his status as one of the all-time greats. His ability to retire undefeated, conquer 5 weight classes, hold multiple lineal titles, and break financial records ensures that his name will forever be remembered as one of boxing's ultimate legends.
Floyd Mayweather's career after his official retirement in 2017 has been unlike anything the boxing world has ever seen. While most fighters fade into the background or become trainers and commentators, Mayweather redefined what it means to retire. Instead of disappearing, he transformed retirement into a second act, dominating the world of exhibition boxing. His first major exhibition came in December 2018 against Japanese kickboxing phenom Tenshin Nasukawa in Tokyo. The fight was a spectacle from start to finish, lasting less than 1 round as Floyd demolished the young star with ease. Reports suggested he earned around $9 million for less than 3 minutes of work, proving that he could still generate astronomical paydays without the pressure of defending titles or risking his perfect 50-0 record. This opened the door to a new chapter.
crossover fights with celebrities, YouTubers, and even MMA fighters. In 2021, he faced YouTube personality Logan Paul in an 8-round exhibition that captured worldwide attention. The event wasn't about pure boxing, it was entertainment, blending the worlds of sports and internet culture. Mayweather showed flashes of his brilliance, but never pushed for a knockout, later admitting that he had no intention of hurting Logan. For Floyd, it was about business, not proving himself. The fight reportedly generated over 1 million pay-per-view buys and earned him another massive payday, once again reinforcing his identity as Money Mayweather. From then on, Mayweather turned exhibitions into a global business. He fought in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and even returned to Japan for further matchups against mixed martial artists and influencers, collecting tens of millions along the way. These events sparked debates in the boxing world. Was Floyd damaging the purity of his legacy, or was he revolutionizing how retired fighters could remain relevant? For Mayweather, the answer was clear. Boxing had always been a business, and exhibitions allowed him to extend his earning power while keeping his professional record intact. This leads to the larger question: will Floyd ever truly come back? Every time he posts training clips or hints at a possible fight, speculation explodes. Names like Manny Pacquiao for a rematch, Canelo Alvarez, and even UFC stars have been thrown around as potential opponents. Yet Floyd has always been deliberate in controlling his narrative. He knows that a true comeback would risk his flawless record, which has become the crown jewel of his career. Instead, he keeps fans guessing, dangling the possibility of one more real fight while comfortably raking in millions through exhibitions. In reality, Mayweather's retirement has been a carefully orchestrated game. He exits when the timing benefits him, reappears when the money is right, and ensures that his name never leaves the headlines. By blurring the lines between competitive boxing and show business, Floyd Mayweather has not only stayed relevant, but has also created a brand new lane for fighters after their careers end. Whether he ever fights professionally again remains uncertain, but one thing is guaranteed: Floyd Mayweather will always find a way to turn retirement into profit, attention, and spectacle.
Floyd Mayweather's career has ignited one of the most heated debates in boxing history. Is he truly the greatest ever, or was his legacy carefully protected by calculated matchmaking and business decisions? On one side, his supporters argue that a perfect 50-0 record spanning across 5 weight divisions with victories over legends like Oscar De La Hoya, Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, and Juan Manuel Marquez cements him as the pound-for-pound king. They highlight his unmatched defensive skills, boxing IQ, and longevity at the highest level, making him a mastered technician who never fell victim to the brutal nature of the sport. His ability to neutralize the best offensive fighters of his era is often seen as proof of his greatness. However, critics claim Mayweather's legacy comes with an asterisk. They point to his tendency to face opponents either past their prime, like Pacquiao in 2015, or before they had fully developed, such as Canelo in 2013. Some also accuse him of cherry-picking favorable matchups, avoiding dangerous peak challenges like a prime Antonio Margarito or Paul Williams. Additionally, the heavy reliance on defense and technical precision, while brilliant to purists, left casual fans frustrated with what they saw as boring fights, compared to knockout-driven warriors of past eras, like Mike Tyson or Roberto Duran. The debate essentially splits between purists, who value skill, longevity, and dominance, and romantics, who crave risk-taking and explosive violence. In truth, Mayweather's legacy is both. He is a genius strategist who also carefully crafted his career. Whether that makes him the best ever, TBE, or simply the smartest businessman in boxing remains subjective. But what cannot be denied is that his name will forever be part of boxing's greatest debates. No boxer has had a more complex relationship with the media than Floyd Mayweather. From the start of his career, Mayweather understood that attention, whether positive or negative, was the real currency of fame. He leaned into his villain persona, playing the bad guy to sell pay-per-views, and it worked spectacularly. The media both elevated him and attacked him, making him one of the most polarizing athletes in sports history. On one hand, he was praised for his brilliance, his genius in turning boxing into a billion-dollar empire, and his mastery inside the ring. On the other, he was constantly criticized for his brash lifestyle, arrogant interviews, trash talk, and endless flaunting of wealth. Journalists often grilled him about his domestic violence charges, his gambling addictions, and his controversies with fellow fighters, which only deepened the friction. Mayweather himself admitted he thrived on the love-hate relationship. He famously said, "Some pay to see me win, some pay to see me lose, but they all pay." The media also amplified his rivalries, particularly with Pacquiao, De La Hoya, and later Conor McGregor, turning fights into cultural events that transcended boxing. Social media further gave him a platform to directly flex his lifestyle, post his cash piles, and respond to critics, keeping his name in constant headlines.
Unlike many boxers who faded after retirement, Floyd remains a media magnet, whether for his exhibitions, his jaw-dropping purchases, or his commentary on the sport. Ultimately, his relationship with the media is best described as symbiotic. The media needed Mayweather's controversies and flamboyance to generate stories, and Mayweather needed the media spotlight to fuel his empire. Love him or hate him, Mayweather mastered the art of staying relevant, proving that in the modern era of boxing, fame was just as important as skill.
Floyd Mayweather's legacy extends far beyond his 50-0 record, his wealth, and his flashy persona. His true impact lies in how he completely reshaped the way future generations of fighters approach both boxing and the business of boxing. Before Mayweather, many great fighters earned fame, championships, and respect, but very few had long-term financial security. Floyd changed that by proving that a boxer could be not just an athlete, but also a brand, a businessman, and a one-man empire. He showed fighters that they no longer had to depend entirely on promoters to control their careers. By creating Mayweather Promotions and negotiating his own deals, Floyd became the blueprint for financial independence in boxing. Now, young fighters, from Devin Haney to Gervonta Tank Davis, study Mayweather's moves both inside and outside the ring, understanding that talent alone isn't enough. Financial intelligence is just as important. From a boxing perspective, Mayweather also revolutionized the value of defense. Traditionally, fans and fighters glorified knockouts and aggression, but Floyd built his empire on the opposite, on defense, patience, and the ability to neutralize opponents while taking minimal damage. He proved that hitting and not getting hit could be just as thrilling when executed at the highest level. This inspired a generation of fighters to focus more on boxing IQ, technical skill, and longevity rather than recklessness. His style influenced fighters across weight divisions who now realize that protecting their health and career span is just as important as delivering highlight reel knockouts. Culturally, Floyd's brash personality, over-the-top confidence, and unapologetic flaunting of wealth created a new archetype in combat sports. Whether loved or hated, he demanded attention. This Money Mayweather persona became a prototype for modern fighters and even YouTubers turned boxers who understand that spectacle, marketing, and controversy are as important as the actual fight. Without Floyd, the era of crossover bouts with influencers, UFC stars, and exhibition spectacles might never have exploded in the way it has. He taught the next generation that boxing is not just a sport, but also entertainment, and those who master both will control the industry. In short, Mayweather's impact is seen everywhere, from the new generation of slick, defensive fighters to young boxers demanding a bigger share of profits to the rise of social media promotion in the fight game. He redefined what it means to be a boxer in the 21st century, not just a champion in the ring, but also a mogul, an entertainer, and a self-made empire. Love him or hate him, every fighter coming up today is living in the world Floyd Mayweather built.
Floyd Mayweather's journey stands as one of the most extraordinary stories in the history of sports, a tale of talent, discipline, controversy, brilliance, and unmatched success. From his humble beginnings in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he grew up in poverty and surrounded by violence, to becoming the richest and most undefeated boxer in history, Mayweather's rise is a blueprint of determination mixed with self-belief. His story is unmatched not just because he retired with a perfect 50-0 record, but because he did so while changing the very way boxing operates. He turned himself from a fighter into a global brand, controlling every aspect of his career from fight negotiations to promotions, ensuring that he, not promoters, reaped the biggest rewards. His legacy is not just about the punches he threw or avoided, but about how he rewrote the business of boxing, inspiring future fighters to think like businessmen, not just athletes. At the same time, Mayweather's story is layered with contradictions that make it even more compelling. He is celebrated as a genius inside the ring, but criticized outside of it for arrogance, lavish spending, and personal scandals. He's admired for his discipline and work ethic, but questioned for avoiding risks in choosing favorable fights. Yet these very debates fuel the fascination with his career, making him both a hero and a villain in the eyes of fans and critics. Whether people love him or hate him, no one can deny that Mayweather kept the world watching every time he stepped into the ring. Ultimately, what makes Floyd Mayweather's story truly unmatched is its completeness. A perfect sporting record, an empire of wealth, a personality that sparked endless debates, and an influence that reshaped boxing forever. He proved that greatness is not always about brute force or popularity, it can also be about intelligence, strategy, timing, and the ability to control your own destiny. In the final word, Mayweather's legacy is untouchable because it represents the rarest of achievements. A life where every gamble paid off, every fight ended in victory, and every move cemented his place as one of the most iconic figures, not just in boxing, but in all of sports history.